What's up, guys? It's Dalton from DT's Cool Cards, where we are on our way to build a $1 billion business by combining sales from three to blah, 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 blah. But today, what I wanted to do is part two of like business vocabulary. Um, I would say that I posted it yesterday, but yesterday is actually today, and I actually just posted it just a few minutes ago. I was on dad duty all day today. And actually, I had a great day with Lil. Well, our daughter's name is Lily, but we just call her Lil. We watched Attack on Titan. We played the new 007. We just had a grand. I practiced some of my wrestling moves on her. It was a grand old day. Also in the background as well, since today's the Friday May Mayhem or whatever. I'm looking at it right now, and we're going to double our sales from last year. So I'll be excited to talk about that probably on Sunday. But let's get into 25 more words for your business vocabulary. First is going to be customer service. So for customer service, I mean, just think about it like this: you're helping the customer before and after the sale. Customer service is really underestimated in this business. When you get in discords, or you look at reddits, or you look at Facebook groups, there's going to be a lot of complaining, and trust me, I get it. I'm right there with you. When I'm telling you, probably about 5 times a week, I get cards sent back to me from USPS, and it still happens probably once or twice a week where I have to refund an order because the customer never got it, and I use TCG tracking and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, customers pay our bills, and you have to operate under the mindset that everyone is telling the truth, and treat people the way you want to be treated. And remember, customer service is before and after the sale. It's called customer recovery when something goes wrong, and that's part of customer service. So a lead is a potential customer. You would also say like lead gen. So the other day when I was going in and calling other local card stores to see if they wanted some Chinese cards, I literally just went into Google Maps, typed in card store, and then just looked at like 10 to 15 card stores around me. Those are leads. A little kind of side note: a good way to get extra leads is have your customers be your lead generators. And then conversion rate. Conversion rate is customers who actually, like, let's say, click on your website or go into your store and actually buy something. Um, eBay has a great BI, which is like their business intelligent dashboard. eBay has a great one. TCG Player, we all know the deal, but someone can speak to that way better than I can when it comes to like the online stuff. I know when I've done my website a few times now, but I've always turned it off. But I would see my conversion rate, and it was always zero. Next is going to be advertising. So that's going to be a paid promotion for business. When you're thinking of like a brick and mortar store, you might be thinking of billboards, or if you're big enough, commercials. But for us in this space, you also have to think about it. And I kind of mentioned it yesterday with Facebook ads and Google ads, and all that kind of stuff as well. Sales funnel. Now this is a new one. I've actually never heard of this one before, but it's steps leading customers to make a purchase. So what I would say with that is more of like a call to action. That's something that we think of more in this space when we're doing like content. You always want to add a call to action, like at least two of them in every single video or content that you make. To be subscription, and that's just like a reoccurring payment. For us, for the most part, the only kind of subscriptions we're really going to have is going to be any kind of software that we use. So if you're thinking Sort Swift, or if you have one of the big sorter thingamabobbers, you have like a monthly payment you have to use, like their updating service or whatever. Payroll. So payroll is obviously your monies that you pay to your crew members. I never say employees; I always say crew members. It's just a thing at Canes. But typically for a business, your two biggest line items, for the most part, is going to be your cost of goods sold and your crew members. Those are typically your two biggest lines of P&L. And if I didn't mention it, P&L is a profit and loss statement. It's a statement that every business gets once a month. Like I use QuickBooks. You don't need to use QuickBooks, trust me. I have some different reasons for using it that I'll get into a different day. But it like auto generates a P&L for me every month. So let's talk about the difference between a vendor and a supplier. A vendor is, I guess, in our space, you would think of like going to like an actual card show. That's like more of a vendor, something you might get a few products from here and there. But a supplier is something where I mentioned it yesterday, is where you're going to be getting your wholesale items from. Next, let's talk about the three most common like business types. I will say the most one that you're going to hear everyone say is an LLC, which I'm sure everyone knows. But the reason you do an LLC is because if something happens, you would sue DT's Cool Cards, not sue me. You would sue DT's Cool Cards for all like couple thousand I have in the checking account right now. But you have an LLC, a sole corporate or a sole partnership, and then just a partnership, and then a corporation. They all have like different ins and outs and what have yous or whatever. But for the most part, everyone just does an LLC. Equity. Equity is the value that you have in a business or an item, right? So if you get a card, let's say let's say you buy a PSA 10 Charizard for $100, or the value of it is $100, but you paid $80 for it. You already have positive equity into the card because you have the $20 difference, right? Or if the item goes up in value, then you start to appreciate and get equity into the more equity into the card. And then debt. So let's talk about debt and interest. So every business has debt, right? When you look at a like a business, and it's not their stock options. If you look at their if you want to, they have a if you want to invest in a business, if you want to buy stock in a business, you can go look. I forget what the document's called, but you can look at their liability, which is also their debt. So when you borrow money, other people's money, I talked about yesterday, OPM, you're going to have debt. That's considered debt. Debt is debt. It's going to happen when you grow a business. There is no, for the most part, there's going to be no business you look at that doesn't carry debt. The issue is not only is the debt, but the real issue is the interest that comes with the debt. That's the hard part, is the interest that comes with a debt, because with any debt that you get, even like with a credit card, that's a debt until you pay it off. You have interest that goes with it. And that's one of the ways to build your business is by utilizing credit, right? Which which leads me into the next thing, which is credit, and that's your ability to borrow money. So we all have a credit score. Now, if you want a really good example of credit, go watch. I think it was CNBC or something like that. Go watch the interview they did with Ryan Cohen. I think that's his last name, the CEO of GameStop, when he was trying to buy eBay. It is one of the wildest interviews I have ever seen. But they had a letter of intent, or like a letter of good intent or good whatever, that they were going to get like 50 million or like 5 billion or something like that, of a loan from like these investors, or equity, for whatever you want to call it. But he was still like 5 billion short or whatever. And he kept on telling people in this interview, go read the website. Well, if you read the website, you would know how I'm going to come up with an extra $5 billion or whatever. It was hilarious. But your credit is your ability to borrow money. I will say, for a cash heavy business like ours, it is very difficult to get an SBA loan. But there are ways you can utilize credit to grow your business. With what we do, there's just so much cash coming in and out that our business looks extremely good on paper. Depreciation is the value loss over an item over time. So, for example, my laptop is typically you would say a depreciating asset, because it's going bad. Eventually, I'm going to need to replace it because my laptop is driving me nuts. The second you drive your G wagon off the lot, the G wagon that you got to put on your to file on your taxes, it becomes a depreciating asset. Another thing with depreciation, this is when it kind of gets out of my wheelhouse a little bit. If your business is big enough, you can actually structure out the depreciation of an item over time and get not necessarily kickback, but you can get tax breaks or tax cuts or tax something on the back end with that. Now, let's talk about the difference between budget and forecasting. Typically, when you're looking at a budget, you're really looking at something we would call like a declining budget. So if you wanted to make a budget for how many supplies that you want to buy, let's say how many envelopes, you would just take what you think you're going to do in sales and then give that. Like, let's say you want to spend 5% on envelopes. If you're going to do X amount in sales, you would buy X amount of envelopes. However, when it comes to the budget, what we always say is the budget is the budget is the budget. If you're churning and burning, and you've already like spent your monthly budget on inventory, and you're like on the second week of the month, you're not going to stop just buying stuff because you've already spent your monthly budget on inventory. You're going to keep on spending money to keep feeding the beast, right? However, forecasting is more of like what we do in like the actual Pokemon business. So for example, I felt like I was going to do double the amount of sales this Friday May Mayhem thingamabobber than I did last year. That's like kind of forecasting in a nutshell. But Sure enough, I mean, I am side note, but the other thing that you'd want to do a very good job forecasting of is, let's say, quarter four. You're typically gonna do what, 50%, 75% of your business in the last quarter of the year, at least half in the last quarter of the year. So you'd want to do a very good job of forecasting that. So the most important thing you do in Q4, you do not run out of product. That's the most important thing when demand is at an all-time high, is you don't run out of product, or at least like an all-time high throughout the year. Next, let's talk about scaling. Scaling is just growing your business, right? I think I've mentioned it a million times already, but typically other people's money, or just injecting more of your money into a business to make it get bigger. Operations. So another thing that is very like talked about, not talked about enough, slept on, whatever you want, low key important, is operations. When you think about operations for what we do, it's really going to be how organized you are. That, other than cash, organization is the other biggest bottleneck you have in this business. And so for me, I'm looking at about 60 orders between late last night and today, and I have no issues stocking those orders. I mean, it's going to be easy peasy for me to get all those orders because I literally deleted everything off my TCG Player store, and then I started relisting everything on Chaos System or Chaos whatever, and it's been easy peasy. I have nothing about picking all those cards. I mean, it'll be easy. And next, I guess the last one really is KPI. KPI is going to be key. All right, next we're going to talk about KPI, which is key performance indicators. So those are going to be like your numbers, you would say, if you were doing like a weekly business report, or when you go into your BI dashboard on eBay, all those numbers are your KPIs. I would say for us, the two most important KPIs is going to be almost said revolution, revenue. And then we really don't have a way to look at this right now in its current format. Maybe something with SortSwift might be able to help. And if I can look at it a little differently, is going to be velocity, how fast you are moving your cards. Because I get it right now, but typically everything goes up. But there is going to come a time where cards are not always going up; they're going down as well. So if a card is going up, it's an asset. But once that card starts going down, if you get below that equity line, or that the initial investment, or that you paid for it, or whatever, then it becomes depreciating, right? Okay, and then I've already mentioned it already, but the two little bonus ones are going to be OPM, other people's money. I know, but think about SBAs, credit cards, and then lines of credit. You know, most of us will not even talk about those things or come into contact with those things because we're either not doing this full. We're typically, most of us are just doing this on the side, right? And then last but not least, this is something that's like super important that's not really talked about, is going to be your flow through. So your flow through is additional sales and I guess their ability to efficiently affect your bottom line, right? So if, let's say you did 5,000 in sales on a 50% margin, right? So then you would net 2,500 bucks, right? But instead of $5,000, you did, let's just say, $6,000 in sales, but your margin went from 50 to 45. I can't do that math, but that would be you have a negative 5 flow through. So you would be making less money on more sales. That's not good. Typically, where we're going to come into contact with that is going to be when products go down, right? We hold them too long, or they just go down in overall market value, or we're being very inefficient with our operations. So again, last year for the May Mayhem, I had 2 crew members working with me. It did not go well. I love both those guys and hope they're doing great. But this year, yes, we're going to do more sales, but it's also going to be a lot more profitable for me because I'm going to be a lot more efficient with what I'm doing compared to what we were doing last year. So overall, guys, those are like 52 or 50 or whatever business vocabulary words or whatever. Hey, and if I got any of these wrong, or some of their, I would say they're even confusing to me. I tried to add a little bit extra to each and every single one of these, but I can still get tripped up. In fact, earlier, I think in the other video, I think I got mixed up on what controllable cost versus a fixed cost was. So, these things are going to happen. So if I did anything wrong, call me out in the comments, ask questions. But that's all I have for you today, guys. So far, this has been fun, just talking about business. I really enjoy it. And then tomorrow, well, I guess the day after tomorrow, we'll talk about the May Mayhem. I don't know why I keep on getting that confused. The May Mayhem thing with Bobber sale that's going on today. So DT's Cool Cards out. Check out my pro player site, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.